everybody and welcome back to Witchfix. I'm Sarah and today we're going to be looking at quite a broad issue, which is the issue of magazines. Now I'm probably not alone in the fact that I often succumb to the magazine rack at the supermarkets because it feels kind of like a treat. I think this is something from when I was a teenager and we didn't used to get magazines regularly, and some of my friends got like Sugar and Bliss, and it was very exciting to flick through those and read about, you know, teenagers who have toenails falling apart because of foot fungus and various other interesting issues. But I always kind of see glossy magazines as like a treat, and I tend to buy them for myself when we're on holiday and I want something to read in the car. I buy them at like service stations if we've stopped for like lunch. I'm like, oh, you know what would be really nice? Reading Cosmopolitan. And I don't know why I think this, because no one should have to pay £4 to be told that they need to buy like £50 worth of makeup and also go on a diet, but also make a chocolate cake and buy this dress that costs £500, because that seems like a service that you shouldn't have to pay for. It seems like a service that would be provided from a friend that you would try very hard not to speak to. But obviously there are a number of new age spiritual and mind, body, spirit type magazines that you can buy at the same places, and I have accumulated quite a number of those recently just because of various things, like I was stuck in the town centre and wanted something to read while I had a coffee. So I thought I'd get them together before I inevitably sell them on eBay and talk a little bit about what the different titles that you can get out there are about, whether they are about sort of more witchy things or spiritual things, what you can get out of all of them and what uses you can have for them once, you know, you've read them, and whether they are a good thing for you to spend money on if you're just starting out and you want information about Wicca and paganism and various other witchy topics. So I have quite a few titles here. The first one I'm looking at is called Witchcraft and Wicca, and it's £3.50 an issue. This is not a magazine that you can actually buy at the stationers. I will tell you where you can get these as I go through them all, but this one is published by Children of Artemis, which is a pagan group who organise Witchfest, things like that, and they also publish books and this magazine. So quite a big organisation. You can buy this magazine at Children of Artemis events like Witchfest or the Witches Market. You can also order it online from their website and you can subscribe to it there as well. I think they put out 2 issues a year, which I could be wrong about, but I remember it being 2 issues a year. And if you are a Children of Artemis member, if you join their organisation, you get the magazine for free. I think if you're a gold member, you get 2 copies of each magazine for free. I don't know why you would need that, but I guess you could give them away to a friend if you were a nice person. I bought my copies on eBay. Children of Artemis seem to have an account on eBay and you can buy them for the cover price of £3.50, and they do the back issues as well. The issues that I've actually got at the moment are issue 25, 26 and 28. They are like half magazine size, like what they call handbag magazine size, if you've ever seen the small editions of Cosmo or Glamour or things like that. And they have quite long articles in them. I would say that they're more like newsletters than magazines, in that they don't really go in for like pictures and advertising and all that stuff. It is very much article after article after article, and they have various interesting content written by pagans who write into the magazine or write for the magazine. Because of that, they contain quite a lot of really interesting information. For example, in issue 25, the front cover advertises Finding Your Way in Wicca, Spider Goddesses, Walking the Path of Fairy, Italian Witchcraft, and then Meet the Artist with Carl Johnson. And obviously they also advertise a few things towards the back, different websites like Witch Dating and various Children of Artemis events. So it's a good way to stay current on those. It's also a good way to find reviews of more independent titles about Wicca and various Wiccan subjects. The cons of the magazine are that it's quite difficult to get a hold of if you don't have access to like online buying. It is not terribly thick. You could probably read it in about half an hour if you read like every word, but then not every article is going to be of interest to you. So for the actual price of it, I would say it's quite pricey, although I obviously understand that because it's independently produced, the price is going to be higher. Also, some of the writers or contributors, some of the articles written in it, are not particularly well written. They're obviously written by people who care a huge amount about what they're writing about, but being really passionate and really interested in a subject doesn't necessarily make you the best person to write about it if your writing skills aren't fantastic. So some of them come across a little bit disordered and a little bit difficult to maintain interest in. So that's that's Witchcraft and Wicca. So if you go to Children of Art and Miss events, it's a good thing to pick up there, because sometimes when you go to like the market at those events, they usually have like the Witchfest market. There's quite a lot of expensive things there, and it can be quite tempting to spend like hundreds and hundreds of pounds. But if you are on a budget and you just want to buy something there, and take advantage of the fact that there are a lot of resources there that you don't normally have access to, getting a copy of the magazine would be job one. It's like £3.50. You can obviously also buy used ones occasionally that people have got and they're just selling on eBay. So pick up a copy of that if you're looking for information specifically about Wicca and witchcraft from Wiccans and witches. Next up is Pagan Dawn, much of a muchness with Wicca and witchcraft. The only difference about this one is that I can buy this in my local New Age shop, which I've never seen them selling witchcraft and Wicca in there. Pagan Dawn is £3.75 or free to members of the Pagan Federation, and is a normal sort of magazine size, like A4. It contains lots and lots of pictures and interesting articles. It looks a lot more like a traditional magazine in terms of its layout. The issue that I'm looking at is the Samhain 2018 issue, which is issue 209, the anniversary edition. And it has some quite interesting articles in it. A pagan perspective of spiritual investigation, so like ghost hunting. An article about intuitive magic. There are lots of articles in this one, obviously, about the foundation, the founding of the magazine, because it's the anniversary issue. But they also have lots of different information about pagan issues, like environmental issues specifically. You tend to get a lot of that in Pagan Dawn. And this one has some interesting perspectives on Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is quite interesting from a pagan perspective. There's also things like poetry, book reviews, and recipes and things like that, which is quite interesting. So if you're looking for like a good all-round magazine that's maybe similar to like a traditional women's magazine, Pagan Dawn is probably better for you than Witchcraft and Wicca. Obviously the topics are a little bit more wide-reaching. They tend to feature things about like ley lines, standing stones, more traditionally pagan things as opposed to just Witchcraft and Wicca. But I think that's good because it kind of opens you up to new ideas. There's also sometimes stories in them, like short fiction, and a lot of things like tend to be, in the few issues that I've had at the front, tend to be about sacred sites, usually in the UK, like standing stones, stone circles. So it's good to find places like that if you're English and you want to visit them in your off time. Pagan Dawn you can also buy like online, but again I find it occasionally in the shop that I go to for like witchy stuff, but it does tend to sell out very quickly and they usually only have 1 or 2 copies. If you don't have a shop that's local to you for witchy stuff, this is again one you're going to have to probably buy online, because I've never seen it in like a WH Smith. But it is also quite good, same as Witchcraft and Wicca, for keying you into events that are happening and maybe groups and services that are more local to you in the UK. Moving in now to the ones that you can actually buy on the high street. The first one is Kindred Spirit, which this is my first issue of this that I've ever purchased, because I'd actually already read my usual magazine for that month. This is issue 106 from October 2018, and on the top it says spiritual development, therapies, meditation and relationships, and it is very much about what I would class as spiritual well-being. So there isn't a huge amount in it about, you know, Wicca or paganism, but it does contain ideas and things that might be relevant to a pagan path. This is a lot more like a traditional magazine. You know, it has your letters from the editor, spreads on different things that you can buy and different events that you can pay to go to. So it is a lot more commercial and less pagan community focused. Just to give you some idea of what the contents is like, they've got some interviews with celebrities who are active in the spiritual movement. Then there's a whole article about Stonehenge, a different thing about tapping into the wisdom of old age, some natural health information, a lot of adverts for psychics, finding the balance point, experiencing the equinox through the practice of stone balancing. All of these accompanied by quite large pictures. There's some colouring for mindfulness exercises, some quite large pages which just have like affirmations on them. This is probably, I have to say, my least favourite of the magazines that I've looked at. It didn't really have a whole amount in it that was applicable to me and my path, because it was mainly to do with more modern takes on like spirituality in the like mindfulness arena. There's some stuff about Buddhism and photography, and it just comes across as quite general. Again, there are recipes at the back as well. So this one I would recommend more for people, I don't want to say who are vegan, but vegan people who are maybe more into like spirituality in general without it being attached to a religion, who are interested in a more creative or active spiritual exercise to do with like yoga, tai chi. So those type of people I think this magazine would be great for. It wasn't one for me and not one I would really recommend for its witchy content. Moving into probably the most accessible magazine, this one is one that I've been getting actually quite regularly. I say regularly, on and off for the last 10 years. So I usually buy maybe 2-3 copies of it a year when I'm bored, or I'm sort of feeling like I want a magazine but not one of the Cosmo or beauty magazines. So it's Spirit and Destiny, and you can buy this at WH Smith's like you can with Kindred Spirit, but you will also stand a pretty good chance of finding this in your local supermarket if your supermarket is one of the ones with the bigger magazine section. Because sometimes you get the supermarkets that have like the tiny magazine section. This is the one you find usually if they've got like GQ and other special interest magazines like that, then they'll also do this. I can buy this one at my local Asda and Tesco. I don't believe I've ever seen it at Sainsbury's, but I could be wrong about that. So this one is quite pricey. It's $4.99 per issue. Just to give you an idea, the Kindred Spirit one, which I forgot to tell you the price of, was $3.95. So this one, again, quite pricey. It occasionally comes with free gifts. I have to say that none of those free gifts have ever been useful to me, but some of the most recent ones I can remember, it came with chakra oracle cards, and I think I got some different oracle cards from them a while ago. They usually come with like pictures or various other things like incense sticks or small things like that. The issues that I'm talking about are from December 2018 and October 2018. So these are probably the closest thing to what I would call a traditional magazine, in that they have a lot of pictures, a lot of advertising of different products that you can buy. Now, I used to read this magazine when I was a teenager, so sort of like 15. And my dad used to buy it for me, and he used to refer to it as Spirit and Density, which was not entertaining then, but is mildly entertaining now. And way back then, it used to be more about eco-friendly issues, to do with like changing up your lifestyle at home to include more eco-friendly products and being more environmentally conscious. It has taken more of a shift towards the spiritual recently. It used to have spiritual stuff in it, but again, that has become more of the focus. So in each issue, you'll be told like different things that you can obviously buy, and there's book reviews and things, but you also get life mantras, horoscopes, exercises on connecting with the universe. There's a regular section on working with crystals and working with tarot cards, a regular section about a lady's life with angels and working with angels, which I'm not really into, so I usually skip over, but if you're into angels, there are angels. A lot of the things that they recommend to buy are usually candles, oils, or crystal items. So if you're looking for like gifts for witchy people, you can find them recommended in this. Although, to be honest, a lot of them are really overpriced. Like there was one of these had a thing advertised in it, which was a spray to realign and cleanse your yoga mat for like spiritual exercise, and that cost like 30 quid, so that's weird. There's also a regular feature in these, which is the Oracle page. Basically, it gives you a spread of about 12 pictures, which are in like card form, and you sort of pick the one that your eye is drawn to when you reach that page, and then when you turn the page over, they give definitions and predictions based on your choice. These vary quite a lot. So the one in the December issue that I'm looking at is like a green man themed set of oracle cards, and they're all sort of like green men, green women, with like horns and trees and stuff like that in the background. One of the other ones that I have that was more Native American themed, so it had like drums, hawks, feathers, headdresses, and that one was called Unlock Your Inner Shaman, which brings me to my chief quibble with this magazine, is that quite a lot of it is very heavily culturally appropriative of specifically Native American culture. There have been several times where I've opened it and it's like, be your own shaman, or how to make or how to find your spirit animal with this easy thing, and then there'll be like literally a picture of a white lady wearing a Native American headdress. So it's a bit like that. It's a little bit general and a little bit cringy in that way. If you can get past that amount of like cultural appropriation that you'll find in various issues of it, it's quite a good magazine. It gives quite a lot of information about a variety of topics that will be interesting to you if you're a practicing witch, chiefly like tarot, crystals, herbal healing. There's also things about spells and stuff. This one, particularly because it was in December, had ideas for midwinter rituals and midwinter crafts, which was quite interesting. And it has articles specifically about being a witch or being a Wiccan priestess or things like that, and they are again written by actual practitioners. Again, they also feature things like fiction or poetry written by readers sent in, as well as recipes. So if you're looking for something that is exactly like a traditional women's magazine but with spiritual things in it as well, Spirit and Destiny is probably going to be very much your bag, even though it does come off sometimes as being quite crassly commercial. And a lot of the people who they have doing articles are like, this thing happened to me, and then I thought about it a bit, and then I decided that I had invented a sort of new age spiritual movement, and then I went on to capitalise it and write 2 books and do a speaking tour and make lots of money, and now I sell these special crystals that like realign your eyebrows. There's a lot of that sort of stuff in there, but also a lot of also quite useful and good stuff in there as well. And from my point of view, because I like to cut out pictures and things and put them in my book of shadows to decorate it, Spirit and Destiny has like a lot of mantras and things that you can take and use in that way. Rounding out the collection of magazines that I have to look at, so we've gone from sort of the niche, more Wicca and witchcraft related ones put together by the community for the community, and we've come through a spectrum of slightly more commercial, more widely available magazines. This is probably the most commercial and the most, I don't want to say crassly commercial, but kind of. And this is Embracing Your Mind, Body, Spirit by, I think it's Diagostini, which is like the company that makes it. I have a long-standing relationship with this magazine. It came out for the first time when I was like 9 or something, and they had this big advert on the television about the first issue being 99p, and you know, the kinds of adverts you get in the new year. And it came with, you know, a quartz crystal point and a bottle of lavender oil, and it was all about herbal medicine, herbal healing, magic, spells, tarot cards, astrology, all of the stuff that I was really into at a very young age because of obviously my interest in Wicca and witchcraft. So I nagged and nagged and nagged, and I got that first issue for 99p. Subsequent issues were like $3.99 and would appear in the supermarket once a month, and I would buy them. And then after about 5 issues, they stopped doing them in the supermarket. You had to have subscribed to get the rest of them, and I didn't have the money to be doing that at that age, so I didn't get those issues. Each issue came with like a free gift, usually a crystal or a bottle of essential oil or joss sticks, and you're also meant to build up collections of various different kinds of equipment. So they would give you like 5 tarot cards in a pack, and you would have to collect the whole set. There's also angel oracle cards, runes, various other things like that. And then inside each issue there would be sections about herbal healing, about sex and relationships, dream interpretation, finding your rising sign in astrology, how to interpret tarot cards, spells, ghost stories, all the rest of it. Now, the magazines are actually quite thin and short. I recently bought a job lot of these, 10 of them for £10. They're now £4.99 each, which I think has gone up since I was younger. And I occasionally do still buy the first issue when it appears in supermarkets for 99p because you get a crystal with it or something which is worth that. The information you get in these is incredibly basic. It's very much dumbed down and a huge amount of it is just pictures. All of the pages have 3 holes in them because you're meant to put them in these special binders that come with them and build up a collection which is just a binder of herbal healing stuff, a binder of tantric sex stuff, a binder of divination stuff, etc, etc. As I said, these are like super basic. They give really short introductions to things like aromatherapy and Reiki and all the rest of it. So that's good in a way in that it will give you a small amount of information and then you can be like, oh, this interests me. I'll go away and look at other things as and when I have the time. I think if you were to buy the full run of these magazines, I think there are like 150 issues or something ridiculous. It would get quite dull quite quickly because a lot of the information does repeat itself quite a lot. For instance, in one issue there's a thing about using different coloured crystals, but then in each subsequent issue where you get a crystal, it tells you about what you can do with that specific colour of crystal. So essentially you're just getting that information again. Having said that, these were amazing to me when I was like 10. So if you were a younger person who doesn't have a huge amount of knowledge about any of these particular areas, not saying I have a huge amount of knowledge now, but I have a general knowledge of quite a lot of things. So if you've never encountered things like herbal healing or tarot before, this would be a good way to build up some knowledge, to gauge your interest in them, and also to get a bunch of free shit that comes with them to use in your like daily practice in terms of like crystals and essential oils and stuff, which could become quite expensive. And the good thing is that with the magazine that comes with it, it tells you what you can use it for. So you'll get a bottle of lavender oil and it will tell you, here are the 26 things you can use this for, whether magically, medicinally, aromatherapically, etc, etc. But I think at £4.99 per issue, this is definitely the more expensive end of the spectrum and not something that you're going to want to get like very frequently as a treat for yourself. I think if you were going to buy that sort of magazine, it would be The Spirit and Destiny, and if you were going to buy something that was more about pagan life, you would go for Pagan Dawn or Wicca and Witchcraft. The Mind, Body, Spirit magazines kind of feel gimmicky, which is obviously what they are because they come out in January, and you know, along with all those other ones which are like, you can build this train one piece at a time, just give us like £400 over the course of a year. So that's not one that I would necessarily recommend for people who are like either not willing to spend huge amounts of money or who want to read an actual magazine full of like more interesting and developed content. It is something I would recommend if you were interested in the idea of having something like a subscription box coming to your house with Wiccan things in it, because for £4.99 a month to get like your magazine, that's quite a cheap way to have a try at the sort of subscription box thing. As for what to do with these magazines once you've got them, I do think they are quite interesting things to introduce new ideas into your practice. Probably better off spending that money on books, but if you were the kind of person like me who infrequently wants a magazine to read when you're having a coffee, out and about, or on a long car journey, then you could do worse than buying one of these. And when you've used it, in my area we actually don't recycle paper for some stupid reason, so if you can't recycle them, which is obviously job number one, they do have a lot of nice artwork in them, specifically Spirit and Destiny and the Mind, Body, Spirit magazines, pictures and things that you can cut out. I tend to cut out things about spells and stuff to put in my Book of Shadows and try out later, and if all else fails, get a bunch of them, put them on eBay, because someone like me who again wants to cut out and paste and collage from these will probably buy them for less than the cover price, but still a pretty good amount. I hope this episode has been useful to you and that you now have some idea of the magazine options that are out there for your pagan or spiritual interests. Do let me know if there are other magazines out there you've heard of or seen that you might want me to take a look at or you think I might be interested in. I know there are quite a number of ones out there about mindfulness at the moment, which I'm not particularly interested in, but if you think that there's a good one out there, I will give it a try. You can get in touch as usual on Twitter, which is @Witchfix, or you can do so by email, which is witchfixpodcast@gmail.com. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!